Hey, it's Kevin DeWitt here. Welcome back to the Mixing in a Home Music Studio course. In this video, we're going to talk about reverb. So firstly, if you are new to my channel, new to my videos, and you like what you see, click the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell to be notified of all my future videos. So reverb, this is probably one of the most used effects in mixing, and reverb simply is an effect that creates sort of a room sound. It can be an echoey sort of sound, it can be a cave tunnel sound, it can have various settings to make things sound like you're playing your instrument in a chamber, in a church, in a massive big arena or hall, or it can be in a tight little room or cupboard or something like that. So it creates space, it creates air and atmosphere around your instrument. Now, depending on how you record, you may have some of that already in your recording from the location you recorded. But a lot of people generally will record their tracks very dry. They'll have very treated rooms without reverb because the reverb in those rooms is usually not very nice sounding. So what we do is we add reverb in our mixes to get that back, but get it back in a more pleasing sound and a more appropriate sound to suit the song and the style we're going for. You know, depending on your style, you may want little reverb to no reverb. You may want big, you know, extreme reverb settings if you're doing some sort of atmospheric experimental style music or something like that, right? So there's all different settings and concepts you can use for reverb, and it's lots of settings and lots of styles, and probably easier to go through them all in the software so that I can show you and let you hear them as well at the same time. So let's get into it and let's explain it a bit more, and I'll show you in Cubase. Okay, so we are back in Cubase and we're going to run through a few sort of plugins for reverb and that sort of stuff. So what we're going to start with is we have a guitar here. So I've deliberately gone for a fairly clean guitar, just for the example. Now I've put it in the center. It is mono, so we're going to get slightly different results here. And not so much a wide stereo effect, but we'll show you other techniques for that. So there's tons of plugins out there. Okay, so we've got, let's start with some Cubase ones. Okay, so we've got Roomworks, very standard one for Steinberg, and I'm basically just going to turn it on. I loaded this, it's default, nothing special about it, and suddenly we have a sound. That's bypassed, very dry. Now it sounds like it's in a hollow sort of empty room space. Okay, so in regards to controls, there's lots of controls on different reverbs and all that sort of stuff. This picture here is supposed to give us a sort of an idea of the size of the reverb. We've got a reverb time, which is like 1 second. We've got things like pre-delay. All right, so here we've got some frequencies, so we can filter some stuff out to make our reverb darker. So we just play it through. Again, this is not a walkthrough of the plugin, it's just to give you an idea. So you can filter out all the low end. So your reverb becomes very high pitched, or you could let it all in. You can also make it sound dull. Now this is actually the input. So this is controlling the frequencies that are coming into the reverb, which can change, you know, sort of what you have going the other way around. So that allows all the frequencies in, or that makes it dark. Now you can also do it on the other side with this dampening control. Control sort of like the output of the reverb. You can hear that sort of really darkened up the reverb. Okay, so something like pre-delay is sort of, okay, that determines how quickly the reverb starts. Now that can impact what it sounds like, how big the room sounds. So you can see the visual representation. Put it down to 0, it indicates the reverb should start instantly. You can delay it as much as you want, almost getting an almost like echo effect. Now it's supposed to sort of emulate where like the first wall is or something like that in the room, to where you're going to hear the audio sort of bounce off that wall. You know, that's similar, sort of what it's supposed to represent. Now, size, I would imagine, is, I mean, you could saw that it expands there. It's supposed to be like the size of the room or something like that, but it doesn't seem to have much impact on it there. Now, the time, that is supposed to represent how long the reverberation can take before it dissipates down to nothing, right? Because as this diagram explains, reverberation sort of starts off really loud and then it just dissipates over time, depending on the size of the room, all right? And it will just slowly dissipate to nothing. So, you know, we could make it really short. Now, usually what I do is I pause the audio because you can usually hear the trails at the end. You can hear that sounds very dry. Still very quick. So, you know, 20 seconds, it almost sounds like it's endless. It just keeps going, till it slowly dissipates to nothing. So the longer the time, the more grander and longer the reverb is. Now, because I've got this on the actual track, usually what you're going to do is you're going to adjust this mix control. So like if I put it to 100% wet, or I could just even tick this box that says wet only, you'll hear no dry signal. You'll just hear the reverb. Okay, so we're hearing none of the dry signal now. This is just the reverb. If I go down to there, we're just getting the dry signal, no reverb at all. So if you play an instrument like a guitar or something like that and you have a reverb pedal, usually what you'd set it to is a small percentage and just adjust that to get the level of reverb you want. This is no different. When you put it directly on the track, that's exactly what you're doing. And the higher you go, the more reverb there is, the less direct signal there is. Okay, and there's all different types and sounds of reverb, right? So, you know, that's one example of reverb, a normal reverb there, a digital-based one. We also have this one here called Reverence, which is a convolution reverb. Now this one here is supposed to emulate various locations. So for instance, let's just say this Austrian concert hall, right? And they put a nice little picture there, and this is supposed to be a representation or a capture of the ambience qualities and the reverberation of this location. Now we've obviously got this on 100. So let's back it down. All right, but it's not a massive reverberation there, as you can see. So you could pick anything else like catacomb. All right. Unfortunately, it keeps changing the mix. Oh, it could lock it actually. That would probably stop it changing. So, you know, you've got plenty of examples here. Just trying to think. An English chapel. So this is supposed to give you a representation of you playing your guitar in this English chapel. This is what it would sound like. Or a Japanese concert hall. Many options here. New York City Church. NY Studio A. A tunnel. So you can see this different type again, and there's not much in the way of settings here because, you know, you are supposed to just live with what the actual sound is. That's why you're picking it. Now, you can change it, right? There are settings to change things and overrule it. But, you know, in theory, you're probably not meant to. So we'll turn that off. There's other developers that make these things. We've got, you know, Waves here have TrueVerb. And we could pick up, you know, preset. Okay, for some reason, oh, no, I didn't turn it on. There we go. So this one here, you can even turn off. Just have the reverb. You can turn off the early reflections and the direct. So I could just have the early reflections and the direct. Again, you've got the room size. Sort of a dimension setting. And a distance. Yeah, you can adjust the frequency response however you want. There's lots of settings in all these plugins. As I said, it's not a thing about the actual plugins themselves. I'm just trying to give you some examples here. And this one here is UAD emulating a vintage reverb unit, which is a plate unit. Now that's set to fully wet, so let's cut that back. So you can hear, you know, some reverbs are nicer than others. You can pick and choose what you like. Okay, there's different, this one here, being a vintage unit, you know, they all have very similar settings. It's just a matter of getting to know each of the different types. You know, this one here, the length is here. You got 3 different quality or sounds. And, you know, you've got an input filter here. You've got some filters here if you want to make it darker, brighter, whatever. You've got a pre-delay here, and here's your mix control, which was fully wet before. So that's what happens if you put it on the actual track itself. Now, where I generally put all my reverbs is to put them on an effects track. And then we use our send to send it there. So for instance, let's open up this one here, which is RoomWorks SE. It's just a cut down version of the RoomWorks plugin we had before. But now if we go to a send, what we'll do is we'll actually set up a send here and we'll go to this guitar effects 1. Okay, and we turn that send on. Now we're sending all of it at the moment, so that's a lot. And make sure I bring that in. Now, because this is a stereo effects channel, now what we're going to do is we're sending a mono track, we're sending it to a stereo track, but it's now going to get a stereo effect from this reverb. So you'll hear it sounds a little wider. We can give it a lot more. A lot bigger reverb time. Okay, but when you do it this way, not only can you adjust your plugin and everything else, but what I would do in this case, having it on this track here, I would actually set it to 100% wet. Okay, I would have the track, effects track up to 0. And then what I'd do is I actually control how much reverb by how much signal I send to the track. So with it down to nothing, infinity, it's dry. As I bring it up, we get more and more reverb. So if you get up to 0, default is 0, is infinity. So you can hear that's giving you a lot of reverb. Now, if I cut that down, getting a nice subtle amount of reverb now, and it's stereo based. So let's try a different plugin, just for an example here. Let's try another emulation of a vintage unit, which is this EMT 250. Now let's just crank up that for a minute. Again, we've got presets here, so we could just try to find a nice one. And again, see, we've got it on fully wet. We'll go with one of those. So you can see the controls on this one. We have a few different buttons here. We've got this like delay, phase, echo, chorus, space, I think it is. And then you've got these dials, right? So you've got your fully wet, or you can do a mix. And you've got your time control, right? So we can move that up and down to get our time. We've got this one here. It's just like a multiplication type thing. It's a weird controller, right? I'm not going to try and explain this, but you can just play with these things, right? You don't always have to understand what every control does. Just play with it. See what you get. That's part of the fun of it. But let's get back in here, right? So we'll drop that back down. So we've got no signal going through. And you can see here on the meter what we're sending to this track. And it's nothing at the moment. So I can just dial it up a bit, get the level I like, and just leave it there. All right. And then if I want to compare before and after, I can just turn this send on and off. So this is dry. Right, you can hear it widen up into the stereo effect. Or clamp back down to dry mono signal. Now this obviously works with stereo tracks as well. There's nothing stopping you there. The beauty of doing this with this effects track is not only is it giving us a stereo effect on a mono track, but we can also send multiple instruments to this same effects, right? There's no stopping us. We can put all of these going through this same reverb, right? And just have them all gel together in the same space with the same effect, sounding the same. So they would be the main locations that I would do that. Now, you know, sometimes I will have, say, this room reverb send here, which I've got on pretty much every track. And that might be this one here. We might have, do we have, no, we just have gain at the moment. So on this one here, RM for room, PL for plate, HL for, you know, hall, SP for spring. So I might have them in my template, and what I'll do is I will just grab, for instance, which one? Real reverb. So I might bring up a reverb here, and I'll say I'm going to pick something that is a room. I don't know, let's just go big cement room, whatever. We might make it fully wet because we're putting on an effects track. We'll bring it in. Okay, that brought all the tracks in. Didn't mean to do that. Okay, so let's turn that one off. It should have now. Yep, it's brought it in. Why is it still bringing in everything? Okay. Why does it not want to do it? Well, regardless. So we've got all these tracks here, all going to this room verb. And it's a very subtle reverb, right? So, you know, if I was to actually take this off. You can hear it slightly widen up, but it's very subtle. And what it's doing is it's me putting them in a space, pretending they're all in the same room together playing, right? And that's why I keep it very subtle. It just adds this tiny little bit. So there's the mono track, right? Now, to get the true effect, I would have to actually pan that back to where I had it. Because I did actually have 2 guitar tracks being stereo. But we could turn up these sends. It's still going to be subtle because it is a subtle reverb. But we could pick something totally over the top. Yet it's still very subtle. Well, that's weird. I don't know what. Oh crap, the effects bus is not playing. Okay. Now that I've got them all unmuted, you can hear the impact that this is doing now. Right, but you can hear there because I've cranked that up. But all these guitars are going through that same reverb. Now if I turn it, hang on, I'll just mute bypass. So it's a subtle way of adding to the room. You could hear there when I pause the music, you could hear that little trail off, just a tiny little trail off there to the room. And it puts all the instruments in the same room. So that's something that I like to do as well. But I'll add more reverb on top of that. That's just sort of like my base reverb. Put all the instruments in the same room, pretend like they all recorded together, even though I know they didn't, and then add, you know, additional reverbs, etc. for effect after that fact. So there you go. That is reverb and how you can use it in your mixes. Let me know what you think of it in the comments. I'm assuming everybody's using this, and if you're not, you're probably going to very soon. If you do have any questions about it, or if something was not explained very well, please feel free to put it in the comments. I read all the comments and I'll answer as many of the comments and questions as I possibly can, as quickly as I can. If you did like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell to be notified of all my future videos. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.